Good evening to all of you, and welcome to our weekly meeting dedicated to the study of the Word of God. Today we are going to dwell on the chapter 22 of the Gospel of Matthew, which corresponds to the one we will be proclaimed this coming Sunday, the 30th Sunday of Ordinary Time. So first we proceed to the proclamation of the Word of God, and let us stand. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a scholar of the law, tested him by asking, "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" He said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and the first commandment. The second is like this: you shall love your neighbor as yourself. The whole law and the prophets depend on these two commandments, the gospel of the Lord."
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
The context of this gospel is again like the gospel of us last Sunday, Jerusalem. Jesus went to Jerusalem to preach again the gospel and to proclaim the good news not only to the people but especially having in mind the leaders, the religious leaders of Israel. Was, as you know, a very dangerous trip. The gospel mentioned the determination by which Jesus decided to go to Jerusalem on that occasion, against the advice of the disciples, especially Peter, remember? And he went to Jerusalem not to die in Jerusalem, attention, he was a human being like you and me. He went to Jerusalem to preach the Word of God, the good news, hoping that even those leaders running the country financially and religiously and politically would listen to him. The result would have been wonderful. A lot of, changes, social and political and religious changes for the people. That was the hope of Jesus. Jerusalem on those occasions was full of pilgrims. It happened around 1 week or so before the big celebration of the Passover. And as in every year, people were coming to Jerusalem. There were quite a number of pilgrims already. Every morning Jesus used to go to the temple and preach the good news to them. And among the listeners, they were the enemies of Jesus. As you know, they have been plotting for a long time against Jesus. They wanted to silence Jesus, to kill him, because he was a dangerous man for their possession and life and oppression of the people. They were enemy number one. So they couldn't seize him in public because Jesus was surrounded by a sympathetic audience, many friends, because they spoke with authority, and the good news was extraordinary, beautiful good news, and they were delighted listening to Jesus. So, as you know, like in the last Sunday, they chose the strategy of damaging his reputation, making him say something wrong, to give them an occasion to arrest Jesus, or at least to diminish his predicament in front of the people. And so they excogitated a kind of tricky question. 5 is recorded in the Gospel of Matthew, and they were trapped, clearly, openly, waiting for Jesus to fall in the trap. We remember last Sunday Gospel, and the question was, is it okay, is it licit to pay the taxes to the Caesar, to the emperor or not, was a political religious question. And you know the answer of Jesus didn't answer them directly. Jesus said, show me the coin, remember? And he said, whose face is this one? The coin, silver coin, by which people with which to pay the taxes. And they said, Caesar. And this inscription was high priest, son of God, you remember very well, and said, it is Caesar. And Jesus said, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. This religion based on money, and the face of the high priest of this religion printed in the coin is not the one God wants. So give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but attention, give to God what belongs to God, human being. Therefore, respect human being is the consequence that they understood. Don't oppress human being, don't exploit human being, don't despise human being, don't marginalize human being, respect them, love them, don't judge them. The whole gospel is the Lord telling, give back to God what belongs to God, the human being, the people made in the image of God. So the Sadducee, that the one put in that question, were reduced to silence. The Sadducee, as you know very well, they were controlling the temple of Jerusalem, the liturgy of the temple, especially the income of the temple. The Jerusalem temple was one of the biggest financial institutions at the time in the province of Syria. There was an enormous amount of money put in on the temple of Jerusalem because of thousands and thousands of pilgrimages. So they were controlling that extraordinary work. They were rich, they were powerful. They were only concentrated and focused on the big pilgrimage and big ceremonies of the temple. They didn't care about the situation of the people. They even didn't believe in the life after death. They were friends of the Roman, collaborators of the Roman systems of colonialism. They failed. There was a good opportunity for the other enemies of Jesus, the Pharisees. They were against the Roman. They were in favor of the people, but they were severe and radical and obsessed, attention, obsessed with the commandments that people were supposed to obey. They were obsessed with that. In fact, if the tax system was so oppressive for the people, the religious networks, commandments and norms and injunctions and prohibition and taboo, but no less oppression for the people. They were really oppressed, religiously oppressed. Was, as I told you last Sunday, religious terrorism. If you open the gospel, you will see very clearly that Jesus, spent a lot of time expelling demons from the mind of the people, and sometimes we think that those demons was evil possession. No, they were people psychologically destroyed by that kind of permanent guiltiness. Their relationship with God were ruined by this amount of commandments, and they couldn't cope with so many demanding questions from God. So they were living in permanent state of guiltiness, and the psychological consequence, they were not at peace with God. They believed that God was already angry at them because they were unable to put into practice so many commandments. The system is ridiculous, borders of the comical. Imagine. These doctors of the law were able just to take out of the scripture as many as 613 commandments, covering every aspect of the life of the people, personal, familiar, their relationship with God. 613 commandments. Out of these 613 commandments, 365, one commandment for each day of the year, they were negative commandments, meaning to say, you shall not do so and so and so. Imagine 365. 248 were positive commandments. You shall do this and this and this and this. Ridiculous, but very oppressive. At the time, there was no way out. They couldn't do like we do today to say to God goodbye. if there is so many atheists in the world, it is because the image of God that we presented to them is not that appealing image of God. So in part, we, the church, are responsible. And sometimes it was an image not very, very, very lovable, an image of a, strict father, always looking and taking into account everything that we do wrong. And people today say, bye-bye, this God. I don't believe in anything. At the time, they couldn't do that. People of Israel, no one was an atheist. The identity of the people laid in their personal relationship with God was a covenant. They felt the chosen one by God. But they couldn't cope. There was always many commandments to put into practice. People were crazy. There was a kind of, difficult kind of life with psychological repercussion. So what Jesus did most of the time in the gospel were just to give peace of mind and heart to the people and to say to them, God is not what you think. God is not the one taught by you, but this leader, the Pharisees. God is love and merciful and compassion. And God is loving you without any condition and pardoning you, and God is with you. And people receive, peace of mind and heart. They were cured. Evil spirit went out. Incidentally, you know very well how the status of women were in those situations. Women were not obliged to accomplish the 248 positive commandments. They had to fulfill the 365 negative commandments. You shall not do that, you shall not do that. But the rest only for men. Why? Because many commandments were dealing with the Word of God, with the liturgy of the temple, and women were banned. They were considered like children at that time. And they were banned from listening to the Word of God. They said that it is preferable to throw the Word of God to the fire that allowed one woman to touch the Word of God. Everything was crazy, schizophrenic situation. And that's the reason why on one occasion when a lady went to Jesus and said, how wonderful you are. Bless the womb who bore you and the breast that fed you. And Jesus said, no, my lady, good. But it is better to listen to the Word of God and put it into practice. So that was the situation at the time, was religious terrorism. They were afraid of God. They considered themselves lost and no remedy to establish a good relationship with God. They were in constant anxiety, and many people suffer of depression and psychological problems. So what's the situation? So the Sadducees, those who put the question of the taxes to be paid to the Caesar, were defeated in silence. They retired. So the Pharisees took the occasion and came forward. And one scholar, biblical scholar, in the name of the Pharisee, they put a tricky question to God. Nothing to do with policy, but equally important. It's a biblical question regarding commandment. And the question was according to the Bible. Teacher, which commandments in the law is the greatest? Actually, the question in the original language, it is, which is the grand commandment, the commandment par excellence, the mother of all commandment, the source of all commandments, something beyond, beyond the commandment. The answer was known by everybody, even to the children. So they expected Jesus to say, of course, this one. What's the grand commandment? The observance of the Sabbath was the mother of all commandment. You remember at the beginning of the Bible that is a symbolic narrative of the creation, 7 days, and on the 6th day God created a human being in his own image, and then the 7th day God rested, and God made this day holy. and told the people of Israel to celebrate faithfully this Sabbath day forever. So, in this first chapter of the Bible, the narrative of the creation, symbolic narrative of the creation, it is very clearly put the identity of Israel. So they believe they were chosen by God to praise and to worship God in the name of the whole creation, in the name of all the people of the earth. And that was the identity of Israel, and was the grand commandment. So they expected Jesus to say, the Sabbath, of course, but Jesus didn't say that. They were prepared to counterattack. Right, Sabbath, we agreed. So, why don't you observe the Sabbath? Jesus was famous because on the Sabbath day, they did many things in the synagogue that the people did not accept the leaders of the law. For instance, healing, curing people. And they were afraid, said, you are not allowed to cure people on the Sabbath. The Sabbath was a very, very important day in which almost everything was prohibited. Work, of course, even the minimum thing to be done was prohibited. Even to light a candle was considered as work. You know, I'm talking about those radical. And like, for instance, they were counted the steps that you can done on Sabbath day. So limited, they were really caught. They were supposed to be concentrated in worshiping and loving God and praising God. And Jesus was free. And Jesus said in one occasion, the Sabbath was made for the people and not the people for the Sabbath. Jesus does not answer. Didn't mention the word commandment. He started his answering by saying love. And Jesus said, answer with two quotations, one taken from the book of Deuteronomy, and it was the center of the profession of faith of Israel. Listen, Israel, you shall love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with everything you have. It is the first quotation, love your God. You know that the book of Deuteronomy is the result of a reform movement that spread all over the country and took place in the 7th century after Christ. There were moments very dramatic for the country Israel. At the time, they were divided into two, the kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south. You remember very well, the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom of Israel fell under the authority of the big power Syria, was taken, and thousands of people were deported to the big city of the empire. It was a very moment of crisis in Israel. So the remaining kingdom of the south, there was a movement of reform, and they said we should go back to God. And the result of this movement was the book of Deuteronomy. The whole book of Deuteronomy is homilies, encouragement to say to the people, please come back to God, but with a heart, and accept the law of the Lord. It is wonderful and it's lovable, and it's going to renovate your whole life. And that's the reason out of this came the credo of Israel, that each of the Israelites recite 3 times a day, love your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength. And later on, Jesus quoted another passage of the Bible taken from the book of Leviticus. It was wonderful also. It is called the Code of Holiness. And Jesus said, the first is one, love God. But there is another one similar, at the same level of this one. Read in the book of the Leviticus, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Everything is here. It was the answer given to these people. Didn't mention commandment, didn't mention obligation, didn't mention norm and everything, only love. So what's the answer given? In fact, The gospel from the beginning to the end, not only the gospel, not only the New Testament, but the Old Testament from the beginning to the end is talking about the love of God and the love of neighbor. And especially the New Testament. In the New Testament, Jesus is offering for free the infinite love of God and waiting and asking and pleading to return that love to him. God is love, and the nature of God is love, and he knows only how to love, and everything is about love. Any relationship with God based on transaction, I give to you and you give to me, any conception of religious and relationship with God based on the thing we are supposed to do to please God, meaning to say to do all kind of prayers and pilgrimages and rosary, even the commandment, having in mind they have to pay back God so that God will pay to us, will bless us, will love us, is not the relationship Jesus wants in the gospel. Is freely, is about love. So the commandments that do not come from outside, come from inside the person. Because God made us to love and to be loved. Jesus later on will say that the measure of loving, the people is not the love that we have for ourselves, because it is very dangerous. Sometimes we hate ourselves, and therefore we hate everybody else, right? And in this case of hate, I kill myself, but before I kill as many people as possible. Is the fruit of self-hatred that later on is projected on the people again. The measure is the love that Jesus is having for each one of us. Love one another as I have loved you. Later on, along the gospel, everything will be reduced to one commandment: love your neighbor. Because to love our neighbor, meaning to say we accept the plan that God presented to each one of us, in which everybody is included. Love your neighbor means that we love God. God made us for love, and that's the reason why God made us extremely rich and desperately poor at the same time. Rich because we are full of qualities that God gave to us, each one of us without exception. In the religion of Caesar, in which everything is money, the only quality appreciated is the capability of producing money, and being, a producer of money, you are very much appreciated. In this other alternative society presented in the gospel, everybody is absolutely necessary, can contribute, to the welfare of everybody, because we are full of qualities. God gave us a treasure of extraordinary quality, the quality to love, the quality to listen, the quality to enjoy, the quality, and desperately poor made the Lord. We need others, psychologically, biologically. We are totally defenseless without others. We need the love of the mother to be fully human being. We need others to love and to be loved. And this, in the relationship between one another, it is the plan of God, in which everybody is respected, everybody is accepted, everybody is welcoming. And this is all about. The Lord said to us to love Him with all our heart. You know that in the culture of Israel, the command center of all decision and choices was the heart. In Western mentality is the mind, and it is the head. All decision coming from the head. And we are accustomed not to trust our heart, because so trusting the heart, a wrong decision will come out. In Israel, the other way around was the heart, the command center. And the Lord said, all the decisions, all the choices in life, big and small, should be always taken into consideration the infinite love and mercy of God our Father. And then He said, love the Lord with all your soul. Soul means life, meaning to say permanently, continuously, with a loyalty that goes beyond the years, permanently, every day. This love is constant and permanently. And at the end, the Lord said, love your God with all your strength. In the book of Deuteronomy, Jesus changed strength for mind and say, love the Lord with all your mind. What is the meaning of that? This is very important for us. To love the Lord with all our mind means to say to put our intellectual power, our reasoning, our discipline of studying the Word of God, searching God, always looking to discover the beauty of God and the will of God and the message of God. Love brings us to know more and more the loved person. Happen here on earth. We love somebody, want to know everything about this person. We are not tired to listen to this person. We are not tired just to know about this person, investigate about this person. Everything about this person is good news. To love God with all our mind is just to put at the service of the knowledge of God our intellectual capacity. And in this, we Catholics have a problem. We are lazy using our mind in loving God. And it happened that many Catholics, especially in Catholic who have been traditionally Catholic for centuries, we are very lazy. And some men and women, even coming, every Sunday to the church, their instruction stopped with the catechetical instruction for the First Communion. They didn't open a book anymore. They didn't open the Bible. They didn't try to study the Bible. With so many opportunities we have now to understand the Bible, to study the Bible, to be a discipline ourselves, to go into the meaning. The Bible is not easy. It was written 2,000 years ago, and some areas, some part of the Bible need a little study, a little dedication. So there are many professional Christians, a first-class lawyer, and first-class doctor, and first-class, professional, but the level of instruction remain at the time of catechism. They don't know, they don't study, don't take into consideration. And very important, we should love the Lord with all the power of our reasoning, and the power of our reflection, and the powers of our commitment. To do what? Just to give a reason of our hope. This phrase is very beautiful, taken from the first letter of Peter. Peter wrote a letter to the Christian going through different, situations. They were overseas workers, sometimes in middle of difficulties and problems, and said, don't be discouraged. But if somebody asks you why you are behaving this way, be able to give the reason of your life as Christian, or your faith, and sometimes we lack. So in today's gospel, the Lord is telling, dedicate some of your time to the study of the Word of God, to know God, to know the beauty of God, to penetrate and deepen into the heart, into the mind, into the dream of God. This was the gospel. Do we need to be liberated from the wrong conception of God? Yes, absolutely. Still among the Christian, there is this conception of God, our relationship with God as a commercial transaction. The reason is that sometimes we are disappointed with God if something wrong happened to us, to our family, and we say, Lord, I am disappointed with you. I gave you this and this and this and this. You didn't pay back. It is not. The relationship is love and only love and pure love. Everything that is imposed, it is something wrong. I feel very uncomfortable. Now more than ever, even the Christians feel very uncomfortable with the supposed imposition coming to Mass every Sunday. If we feel this as an imposition, as a commandment that is demanding of us, and we are afraid not to do so because otherwise something wrong is happening to us, I used to say to the people, don't come to the Mass, stay at home. God is not take revenge at all. He's not going to say you lack, you know how many Sundays a month. Not at all. God doesn't know how to. He will be a little sad, yes. He will be waiting for you to appear, yes. But you have to come move from inside, attracted by the beauty of God. And then this irresistible attraction will make you love, will make you come to the Eucharist, will make you read the Bible, will make you everything. Only the love of God should be the center of our relationship with Him. This is the gospel, beautiful gospel. In fact, if you put the gospel of last Sunday and put the gospel of this Sunday, you know, it is the same conclusion. The Lord said, only one commandment, love. Love God, yes, but love your neighbor the same way Jesus is loving you. And there we will see that you are loving God. Last Sunday, Jesus said, don't touch what belongs to God. And people belong to God. To belong to Caesar is money and power and everything. Forget about it. But what belongs to God, they are the people belong to God. So don't play games to the people. Don't oppress. Don't despise. Don't discriminate. They are the image of God. They are the sons and daughters of God. Don't do that. Very strong. So together, we can conclude with one phrase that it is the summary of the whole Bible from the beginning to the end. The infinite love of God revealed in the person of Jesus. A love without any condition, without string attached, coming from the nature of God, which is love. Second, out of love we were created in the image of God. We are sons and daughters of God. And God is loving us. And at the same time, waiting, expecting, pleading, knocking, cajoling for us to love Him, because He knows and we know that in loving God, loving our neighbor, we become fully human beings at every level. May this word of God penetrate in our heart and change everything is supposed to be changed, so that the only commandment will be the foundation of our lives as Christians. Amen.